what's up guys? This is Eric from CryptoviralTV and I'm here with the guys from QuantStamp.
Oh, hey. Really appreciate joining the show. So I'm Richard, CEO of QuantStamp.
Sitting here, I appreciate being here. This is Martin. I'm Senior Research Engineer from QuantStamp.
The smartest guy in the room. Yeah. Anyway, so Richard, tell me a little bit about QuantStamp. Explain it as you would to a high schooler who has a very vague understanding of what blockchain is.
Yeah, so QuantStamp is a security company that's building software for smart contracts. So we think that smart contracts are going to be really important for the adoption for blockchain.
Of course.
And also for users who are eventually going to use the blockchain for everyday things like games, financial transactions, and also to kind of manage their daily life. So the security of those applications is going to be very important. And QuantStamp is building tools for the security of all those applications.
Anything to add from the tech side?
Nothing.
That
was an amazing answer.
Perfect. Awesome. Streamlined.
Doing well.
How would you say, or actually, different question. Who would you say are your competitors in the market currently? I mean, everyone has their levels, and I do have a vague understanding, but I would want to hear from you.
Yeah, so QuantStamp is one of the earliest companies in smart contract security. So we were funded in July of 2017, shortly after the first parity wallet hack. And we actually built a prototype to detect the first parity wallet hack. And since then, we've grown. We actually went into Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator, and we graduated at the top of our class. And we actually built our first product in March of 2018. So it's been live now for around 4 months. We've done over 500 automated security audits since then. And also we've done around 30 larger enterprise security audits. And so because we're like one of the oldest companies in the space in terms of doing security auditing, we're kind of friends and collaborators with other security auditing firms. For example, Hosho, Consensus Diligence, and another really good auditing firm is called Zeppelin. So they've also been around for a long time, and they contributed to the libraries that are actually used in smart contracts.
Of course.
So we really like those guys.
But Zeppelin's a bit open source, right?
Yeah, so they're basically contributing all this open source code, but they also do manual security audits.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so the main difference with QuantStamp is that we're trying to automate the process because there's simply not enough qualified security auditors like Martin in the world. There's very few. Maybe in the whole world there might be 500 people like that. And so if you imagine that smart contracts are going to become more and more mainstream, at some point it's not going to be scalable anymore to do manual auditing with a human checking code. So that's kind of what we're building at QuantStamp.
To try to automate the system and streamline it, yeah. That's very interesting.
I will add to it.
Yeah, of course.
You used the word competitor, right?
Yes.
But much like development, this is actually an ecosystem. There is a bunch of entities. I'm personally part of this Telegram group where all us auditors kind of discuss where the field is going and what is happening, what is emerging, what new exploits we are encountering. And in the ultimately best world, I would actually be jobless because this whole thing would be absolutely secure, but this is actually not the case, right? So whoever Richard mentioned before, let's think of them not as competitors, but as our friends who are listening to.
Awesome. Some of your coworkers would beg to differ, but I'm definitely, especially in the fields of Korea, there is a lack of presence in terms of really efficient smart contract auditors. Like And gotta get business card. I'll call you later. Okay, no. But anyway, it's definitely a huge shortage in the market, especially for how big, as you guys have been here for the last couple of days, and I'm sure that you guys have seen how crazy the blockchain industry here is, and how much the industry is booming, and how much change has happened within the last 6 months. And there really is a lack of presence in terms of real quality auditors and developers in terms of, maybe it's a language barrier because all of the I guess the shared knowledge, the pooled knowledge online is in English. Obviously, Korea has its fair share of developers. I mean, Samsung, LG, we're pretty big in IT here. But it's not that they don't have the quantitative knowledge to be efficient. It's that realistically there's no one to teach them. How do you guys feel about that? Obviously, developing an automatic streamlined effort is the long-term goal, so that we don't need those human errors. But in the middle run of things, the short-term solutions, I feel like the education process for these security auditors is very important, and there's kind of a lack for that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so our mission in Korea is to help the developer ecosystem gain expertise in security and also help to grow the ecosystem. So in the last week, we sponsored Block Party 2, which is it's a hackathon for purely developers from university. We're really happy to be part of that. And we also spoke at KAIST, which is a top Korean university about security.
I might have heard of it.
So Martin actually presented a new type of attack at this event. And our goal here is to kind of help the companies get more comfortable with security, and also to help the Korean exchanges have better tools for security. So, as you know, like there's some recent publicized events about some Korean projects with issues with their smart contract, and we want to make sure that in Korea nothing like that happens from now on. So I think both from a developer side, from the universities, and just helping with general knowledge for the products, that's what we're looking for.
I feel that this field is essentially very young, right? If you look a couple of years back, the number of cryptocurrencies is actually nearly 1. Right? So that kind of reflects the state of the community. When I get code that is to be audited, you can actually very often feel that it is developed by developers who don't necessarily have the industrial expertise and the level of the code that they write. It's not production code. So it's certainly great that there's lots of interest in blockchain from the rising generation. But they do need a little bit of help, and I think that we are here to kind of help and to help foster the next generation.
Yeah, so one really good project recently is GroundX from Kakao.
Yeah.
And we had the pleasure to talk with their team, and we think that technologies like that's going to bring smart contracts to like millions of people is going to be important going forward. Yeah.
I feel like as much as regulations have trouble, I guess I'll say it in a nice way, trouble keeping up with the advancements of technology, and it was like that in the dot-com era, and you guys definitely see that now. But another system that really fails in keeping up with technology, I feel like, is education. And it's really great that there are these research centers at schools like KAIST, Goryeo-dae, Hyundai, Seoul University, and these universities, and in certain countries, like for example the States, certain Ivy League schools, Stanford, Wharton, they're thinking of presenting and going with. I'm actually not sure who's going to be the one who's eligible to teach this, but a curriculum based upon blockchain security and things like that. But I think a lot of, as young as the industry is worldwide, it's a very slow development in the field of education. What do you think are some ways that we could speed up this process so that educating developers could come just as fast as the advancement of technology?
I think one way that it's actually getting sped up from actually a usual industry is that there's so many startups who are trying to build something. And if you compare that to maybe like the rise of Uber, like ride sharing,
Yeah.
or like Airbnb, there were a lot fewer startups who were trying to improve ride sharing or improve like hotel kind of that industry. So if you look at it purely from the number of developers or projects who are entering the space, it's actually quite a large amount of people. And I find that the main issue for these projects is that usually it's their first time building a blockchain project, and so they still are developing the expertise to do it correctly. It's not for lack of number of people trying. For example, recently there was the Beyond Blocks conference, and there were tons of people there. So
Too many people.
yeah, yeah. And so I feel that like as a security auditor, we see all the projects that are entering the space, and we kind of play a key role where we're kind of being a gatekeeper and making sure that the projects are doing the right thing and taking care of their end users. And we kind of act as a barometer for the industry, like going forward, if there are going to be tons of projects, it's going to be necessary for us to scale. And we want to participate in these research efforts. But I think that maybe with time, actually, the current projects are going to continue to deliver product, and more projects are going to enter the space and try to differentiate themselves, right? For example, if you already have like 2 decentralized exchanges, the next project cannot think of building another decentralized exchange. So I think that's one way that more innovation will happen, more education will happen.
Okay. 2 questions.
Yeah.
Super simple. The last one will be well, I'll ask you when I get there. Aside from obviously your own project, or any of the projects here today, what's one project that you guys are super excited about? Like,
Maybe you can talk about Plasma.
Plasma.
Yeah, so I mean, it has been repeated many times that blockchains have troubles with the speed of transaction processing and with scaling, right? So Plasma, this is our hope of solving it.
So Plasma and Beacon protocol, and using Beacon to be able to navigate between all the sharding and the two-way peg for RFworks. Yeah, we actually had this same exact discussion with another developer like 2 weeks ago. They were on the same level. Yeah, Plasma, watch out, guys.
Yeah. I'm also like actually a big fan of the Lightning Network. So, and the reason I think is that actually Bitcoin has it has a scripting language actually, and I think
Which no one can use. But
yeah, it's quite limited.
Yeah.
But it's very secure.
Yes.
So I think actually if Lightning really takes off, like there's more and more nodes, it could really decrease the price of Bitcoin transactions. And that could be interesting. It's kind of like my counterintuitive thesis for the space, that actually Bitcoin could really be still one of the big players.
That's very interesting. Someone brought that up to me, but could you really argue that with the price, constantly going up, that maybe for corporate institution money going, back and forth, but as an everyday use case, do you think that's actually plausible, even if the transaction fees were to shrink? I mean, the cost of 1 Bitcoin is...
Yeah, I think, Lightning Protocol, Plasma, these type of scaling solutions could present a solution for that. So it depends on how much the transaction fees shrink. And the other thing I think is going to be interesting is that more and more private companies are going to take a lot of the transactions and move it inside of maybe their app. So they're going to be lightning fast because it's free, which I think is going to be very interesting. For example, Toshi from Coinbase, they're kind of moving in that direction. So I'm pretty excited about those type of investments in the space. Like, not every single payment needs to be on a blockchain and verified by every single node. There's lots of ways to make it more efficient. And we're actually also auditing the platform. So yeah, so you know, we're getting to see.
Why you guys are interested.
Yeah, it's. I think it will definitely be coming in the next, I would say, year or so.
Last question. So most of these interviews that I do, I end up talking about blockchain and not crypto, because I want to share the information behind technology, because I want people to know what the hell they're investing in, right? Which probably isn't going to happen just through my videos, but you know, But for this year, short term, bullish or bearish?
I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'm always bullish. I think like definitely bullish.
I think it's just all people in blockchain, just they're always bullish. But yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for the interview, and we're just gonna say bye to the audience now. We're gonna look directly at that camera, and on the count of three, we're gonna say 감사합니다.
Okay, great.
You're gonna try it one more time?
감사합니다.
Okay, yeah. A little bit faster, but ready, set. 1, 2, 3. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
See you guys.